Well, hello, History Dose fans. I am Joe. I'm the artist of the channel, also the editor, and now I actually compose music for the episodes. Before we used to license a lot. Now they're pretty much all originally composed by me, if not partly composed. So I'm the artistic half of this channel. My brother Chris is the one that does all the historical research, the narration, the script writing, and he gives me usually huge guides full of, historical anecdotes, images, reference material for art, down to, how long were the swords, what did they look like, what type of armor are they wearing, how far apart are the columns in this temple, what type of food would they have shown in like a settlement or something. So we go into a lot of the really, really tiny details. And well, today I kind of just want to go into, from start to finish, how I paint. This is going to be more of a personal piece. I'm not going to be doing a full-fledged me collaborating with Chris and him handing me 300 different notes on how accurate this needs to be, and then me showing him a draft and him saying, no, that they wouldn't have this type of helmet, or the bolts in the helmet are wrong. Yes, that is something that happened in our latest Mongol video, Helmet Gate, where I had to go back and I realized that, the seams in the helmets are wrong, and we collaborated with the Jackmeister, a friend of the channel, and also another YouTube historian who's a Mongol expert, and he helped us out with a lot of the details in that video. But anyways, today we're going to be doing kind of some sketch work here. It's not going to be a full-fledged history dose painting, but it's going to be something kind of from imagination. We're going to see where it goes. I kind of have a feeling for a mood, for a color palette, and I kind of just want to explore that and see what comes of it. So we're going to do a whole, start to finish painting here. We've done process videos in the past. In fact, we have an entire playlist of them. If you go to our channel page, under playlists, we have, a dozen or so process videos of watching me paint, and you can kind of see my entire process sped up in those videos. But in this, I kind of want to keep it a bit real time. This is going to be kind of similar to the videos that I've started uploading on the Patreon. If you're a patron to the channel, I've been uploading stuff where I explain my decision-making in the paintings, how I go about with composition, color, etc., etc. Anyways, let's get into it. I know you guys have been staring at a black screen this whole time. That's because I'm gonna put paint on it. Alright, I feel like a huge idiot because I started painting and it was going good, and we were probably 25-something minutes in, and I realized I wasn't recording my screen. I don't know if I hit stop at some point or if I just never hit begin. But I wasn't recording my screen. So we got into this really cool painting, and I was telling you all the tricks of the trade, and now we're going to start over. Anyways, yeah, whatever. Let's do that. So I'm going to kind of go over how I kind of start out. So we have a mood board here, and a lot of maritime stuff. A lot of this stuff is John Atkinson Grimshaw. He's a painter I really admire. I learned so much from him, not personally, because he's, from a couple hundred years ago, but just, he's a master of shapes. And look at this composition. It's actually, as far as details go, it's pretty simple. We have a pretty matte, grayish, landmass here, and the buildings are pretty simple shapes with just dabs of orange and yellow throughout. And this stuff is just mesmerizing to me. I mean, look at this. Like, there's really not much going on here. There's not much detail. Part of that is it's pretty low resolution, but it's mostly silhouettes. But it's believable. Why is it believable? Because look how simple it is. I mean, even when you're zoomed out, you can kind of tell what's going on. And that's the foundation to every great, compelling painting, is you could be standing, across an entire room and it still looks good. And that's what we see here in these paintings. There's a unity to it. There's a feeling of harmony between all the pieces, but it's not overly complex. It's readable. You can tell what's going on even if it's tiny and zoomed out. And you'll kind of see how I approach my paintings. It's very similar to that. So down here we have some of, I believe his name is Frederick Waugh. I could be mispronouncing that because I never bothered to look at the name. Look at the pronunciation of the name. I just look at his paintings and I like them. He's a seascape painter. Excuse me. And, yeah, he's just a master at creating waves. Look at this stuff. Just beautiful patterns. Great contrast. Just great stuff. So this is my mood board. This is my reference board. This is, everything I compile when I'm trying to get inspiration for a piece. When I'm not doing a personal piece like this, and by personal piece, I just mean something that isn't history dose, something that I'm not being given a strict historical guide and pages and pages of this is how this should look. This is all the details I need in it. A personal piece is just something that I can, come up from imagination. But yeah, where was I going with that? I don't know. Well, when I'm doing a personal piece, I find these moods and I find these inspirations and I just put them in a collage and I just, I bake something out of them. So I usually start out with broad suggestions of color. So this is very abstract, but that's how I start out every piece. And I spent a few minutes just, I don't know, doing some random brush strokes and figuring something out here. Of course, I had a much more detailed painting until I realized I wasn't recording and I had to start over. But anyways, I kind of want this. I want this to be a maritime painting. Maybe have a ship in it. I kind of want it to be. I want it to be maybe nighttime, maybe foggy. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking something called a mixer brush tool. It allows me to push around the paint, quote unquote paint, on the canvas already by taking a snapshot of what I select and just repeating that pattern. So let me select this area here of this foamy part of the wave and part of the background. And then when I see that, when I stroke it out here, it has that repeating pattern. So it's almost as if I'm pushing around that paint. I'm stroking around the paint on the canvas. I can even have a more wet format of it, and it almost gives you a bit of a watercolor gradient going on. That's really good for atmosphere, clouds, fog, smoke, even fire. I like to start with a more harder brush like this to just, establish some shapes. And I'm kind of seeing right now, we're getting something here. Maybe some type of stormy sea. This whiteness, this, brighter area. It's suggestive of maybe some foam coming in. Kind of similar to what we have here in Frederick's pieces. I think I want to have some separation maybe in the foreground with some foreground waves. So I'll take this lasso tool and I'll just maybe give me a shape in the foreground to work with. So I'll select a piece of my painting like that. And I can go into Photoshop's brightness controls and just see if we can dim this. This is what I do a lot with my pieces, and I'll just take things and select them, push them around. That looks pretty cool. So it looks like we're kind of getting like a darker wave in the foreground here. So let's stick with that. Let's maybe make it even more darker. Let's add in some darker tones here. This is the great thing about Photoshop is if this didn't work out, I can just undo it all. But it did, and that's how I approach a lot of my paintings, is it's literally pure chaos. And it's like, is this going to work? Trial and error. You'll notice that I'm painting on a pretty small canvas. It's not that small, it's just that I'm zoomed out. I do that when I'm starting out a piece for sure, because kind of what I said in the... Let me make sure I'm still recording, because I don't want to... Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But what I said in the... when I was talking about these inspiration pieces is they need to work on a simple zoomed out level. That's a compelling painting, as if, you know, if it was blurry or halfway across the room, it still works. It's still compelling. Whenever you go to like a traditional art museum or something, when you go to those romantic era exhibits, all those pieces can draw you in from across the entire room because they work at such a simple level. So I like to start a lot of my pieces zoomed out like this. Get a very simple lighting and mood impression. And we'll just play around with the waves. We'll push them around, see what we can get out of it. Something that I kind of want to implement, I don't know where I can do that, is something like this. You see this like wave rolling in, and it just turns to this white foam. But look at this. It's like there's a shadow underneath it. It's almost like it's folding over everything else. So what I can actually do is, let me take this and just use it as a reference here. Make it a little bigger. Maybe we can put something here, maybe. So how's it work? How does it work? What is its shape? Let me change brushes here. Shape is, we kind of have it's kind of shaped like that. It's like going out to in. And this is like a dark shadow because it's folding over the rest of the waves. Let's do this on a new layer, because if I mess this up, I want to be able to delete it. So let's get a shape down here. Something like that. What does it have? It's like whitish on top. How do I want this to look? So I want it to look like it's folding over the other waves, and that might be hard to do, but we'll see if we can pull it off here. That's the thing, is when I'm painting, it's a ton of chaos. It's like I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. It's just, you know, push and pull the paint around, see what shapes you get out of it. But maybe we can get something out of this one. You know what I want to do? I want some atmosphere. I use a very soft, large round brush to establish atmosphere. So I can just pick some color from here. You'll notice too, almost every color I'm using right now is literally the colors I laid out in the beginning. It's, you know, I'm picking and choosing colors across this canvas. And that's because that's what you want in a painting. You don't want to overcomplicate it. You want to stay pretty true to a very simple, you know, palette. You want it to feel unified. And so I will probably introduce more colors, but right now this is a cool mood. This is a cool color statement, and I kind of want to keep it that way. So I'm just using a lot of colors that I've already laid down on the canvas and repurposing them for different scenes. Different parts of the scene. So let's brush in some atmosphere here. That looks pretty cool. Let's get it a little darker up here. A little darker here. Okay, let's go back to focusing on this wave here. How do I want this to look? I want it to look like it's rolling over like that. How do I achieve that? That is the question. So I think I need to make it distinct from the rest of these waves here. So I'm painting it a little darker here so you can see the top. Needs to be blended better. It's not blending very well. This is the struggle with painting too, is you need to not over focus on any individual piece for too long, or things start to look disjointed overall. And so you need to ask yourself sometimes, like, am I focusing way too much on detailing out this one thing at the expense of making it feel unbalanced from everything else? And maybe you are. And sometimes you gotta just say, well, screw it. Maybe this doesn't need to be so finely detailed over here because it's making everything else feel disjointed. Okay, this, maybe it's working, I don't know. Kind of maybe need to take out a softer brush, have a bit of a gradient down here. Maybe zoom out a bit. Is that working? If I push this back a bit, maybe it will work a little better. It might be working. I mean, that's just sometimes if I stare too long at something, I think it's working when it's actually not. Okay, let me just... Yeah, I mean, sometimes I will get way too over-focused on something. And then Chris will see my progress with him and be like, dude, why does that look so weird? And it's like, oh, because I got obsessed detailing this one tree, and now the tree looks like it's in 4K, and the Mongols look like they're made by Monet. And so you need to like check yourself, and like that's like, it's such a weird thing with painting. There's a big part of it is balance. It's just balance, and it's crazy. Even if you make one area look more detailed than the other, it can actually make everything look like trash in comparison. So sometimes it's better for everything to just be like low detail, because or else you risk it feeling kind of unbalanced. Okay, so right now I'm going in, I'm like, I want these waves to have a more sharper distinction from the background. So I'm just painting in a little darker area here. And I'd like to introduce a ship at some point. Actually, I would like to make this piece overall darker, because I kind of want it to be a night piece, but right now it looks more like a stormy piece. It looks cool though. I think it looks pretty cool. I kind of want to, so we have these darker waves in the foreground here, which is cool. I like that. It helps us give a sense of distance and scale, but I want these waves to also not feel like they're just, you know, gray blobs. So maybe I want to put some white, I don't know what you call it, foam in it. Give it a feeling of that it's just as in motion as the rest of the piece. Oh, what if this wave right here was like crashing down like that? That's kind of cool. I kind of like that. This is like my painting style. It's seeing stuff in clouds. Like, it's seeing shapes in clouds. It's making stuff up as I go along. So I'm experimenting. That's half of all my stuff, is just let me throw this in and see how it looks. Does that look good? Does it look bad? And hopefully it reads well. So maybe let's detail this out here. I like this sharp tip right here. I like this. I like that contrast. But let's give it texture. Let's make it not perfect. Things are not this perfect in real life. That's the fun thing. Just trying to figure out how much can I push a piece and make it still look realistic. How much is too perfect. I'm just going to check and make sure everything's still recording okay. Everything is recording okay. Great. Okay. I'm still recording the screen. Good. Okay. So let's get back to painting then, if everything's working out. Great. Okay, so we're getting an idea of what this is now. This right here, why did I stop doing that? Let's figure out how to make this. Okay, so something weird is going on here. I just feel like that's not working as well as this. And I think... actually, I don't know why it's not working. But maybe I need to just work on it more. See what type of shape I can get from it. Or maybe it is working. Maybe you guys think it looks good, but I don't. Okay, so he has I don't know. He has a general brightness going on here, which helps bring out a bit of distinction. And that's a tricky thing with, using references but not strictly is the scene I'm making is obviously not this scene, but there's a piece of it I like. And how do I make that work in something that is not the same scene? How do I draw inspiration but still make it look like it's naturally a part of my painting? And it doesn't look like it belongs in a different world. And so sometimes that means, work with the reference, but work with it loosely. Don't take it literally. So, maybe the reference is an aid with regards to, where the lighting's supposed to hit. Or maybe the reference is an aid with regards to the color or the shape, but it shouldn't be strictly adhered to, or else it looks like it's just, it doesn't belong there. And right now I gotta figure out if this belongs here. Maybe it does. Sometimes I will use layers, and I'll have multiple layers. This is actually... a lot of this stuff is on a separate layer, but, I like to work in one layer. Because I want it to feel like I'm doing it on a single canvas. And there's some... I don't know, there's some charm or something that kind of bleeds through in the authenticity if it's I mess something up, and I can't just, say, oh, well, that was just on layer 6. I'll just erase that off of layer 6. It's almost like, oh, well, if you mess something up, you got to rework it with your digital paint. Kind of like how a real artist will have to go in and rework something. Let's see how dark we can make it underneath this and it still be believable. That's the cool thing about this, is look how dark it is underneath. That just makes it pop more. I wonder if we can do something similar. Oh, let's make this super dark and see how that works. Let's make, right in front of it, let's make it a little lighter. Just see how that looks. You know, half the times I'm making these decisions about, I want this darker, I want this lighter, and it's like, there's not much of a reasoning behind it. It's just, let's see how that looks. Hopefully it looks good. I wonder if I had this part wrapped around here, you know, would that look cool? Like it's crashing in that way too. I gotta make sure I'm not getting too obsessed with this because I have a whole painting to make, not just one section of it. Let's throw away that reference for now. Because it's getting me way too hyper focused on one area. And I don't want that. Because the moment you do that, the whole piece falls apart and it starts to feel disjointed. Okay, we haven't really been focusing on this background. How big do I want these waves back here? Let's lasso in some shapes. So yeah, I'll use the lasso tool and then I'll just like brush in up until the border of that lasso tool and just see how that looks. So let's brush in some more shapes here. Let's see if that looks cool. Well, you know, it does look cool. That does look cool. Okay. So yeah, it's chaos. I bounce between foreground and background like crazy. And it's just like, let's see how this looks. But yeah, people will ask me about my process. It's just like hard for me to break something down because a lot of it's either second nature or I just feel like I don't have a process. Like I'm just kind of winging it and laying down colors, laying down brush strokes and see what might come of it all. But you'll see once you have like the shapes down like this, the shapes and the colors, it's seeing images in clouds. It becomes easy to just push and pull things and it still look okay. Kind of like, it's the same thing with making clouds and making mountains. Is once you have the right colors down, once you have the right shape, roughly, you can get away with a lot. You can get away with, you know, changing this rock here or changing the top of this cloud and it still looks good. Because clouds and mountains, valleys, they come in so many different ways in nature that we could make this wave bigger if we want to and it'd still look good. But I don't want to do that. There's a point though where if you push something too much, you make it too big, you make it too epic, that it delves more into surrealism, maybe even fantasy, which isn't bad. I mean, I mainly do paintings that have more of a, I don't know if you want to say like realist quality, where they don't look fantastical in the sense of this is a world of magic and make-believe. But, you know, I started out primarily, my earliest work is all fantasy. It's all made up, you know, worlds and magical epic mountains. Not a ton of realism. Just making sure I'm still recording. I am. Great. But yeah, so I started out mainly as a fantasy artist. And I still do fantasy. It's nice because you can break all the rules if you want to. Do I want to have a giant castle jutting out of the side of an epic mountain that's, you know, 10,000 feet? Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, actually, I'm actually working on this piece right now. It's just a personal piece. It's, I don't know, I started out as a river, and then I was like, let's have a castle or town in the background. I was like, cool, that's cool. And then I was like, I want more depth. Let's have some towers. And then started putting in like these ruinous aqueducts and then these gangs of maybe thieves or rangers. It just kind of worked itself out. I'm still working on it. It's not still a bit rough, so I want to tune up some details. But this is just something where it's like, this isn't for History Dose. This isn't for a commission. This isn't a job. This is just Joe wants to have a relaxing time painting something. But let's focus back on this. Yeah, this is looking interesting. What if this wave back here had some darkness under it, like it's also kind of folding over the rest of the water? Let's pull some of the dark tones over here and just see if we can make that look a little more 3D. Like it's gonna fold over all the other cascading water. I think I hear thunder outside. I don't know if that's picking up for you guys. I don't know, that kind of works. Maybe this too. Give that a bit of a edge here. Like it's casting a shadow. That's how violent these waves are. They're casting little shadows underneath everything. We still need to kind of figure out where's this. The light, I think the light is kind of coming from here, you know. It's maybe kind of top down. But I'm not married to that. I could switch that up. But let's detail these out a little more. Do I want more waves back here? Maybe. Let me just copy and paste this. So you can copy this, paste it, and just say, what would it look like if I pulled this around and baked it into the other layer here? What does that look like? Does it look good? Might look good. Let's see. That looks cool. It's given us some distance. Like maybe there's suggestion of other churning waters, like even beyond this point of foamy tumultuousness. So yeah, I'm just feeling a lot of this out. It's like not even there wasn't really a sketch or anything. It's just feel it out, reference back to this. Like, do I want a folding wave like that? That's cool. Would that look good? Let's see. Hold on. I actually got to text Chris something. We are co-workers after all. So, yeah, we're working on the latest video, and I probably should be composing music for that. But I just had an artistic urge, and I wanted to make something. Okay. Yeah, I texted him stuff. Okay, so this might be a risk. Let's give it a shot. What is the shape? Okay. And like I said, like, you can't be married to a reference either. Because if you end up getting married to it, then you're going to have kids with it. No. Well, if you end up getting married to it, it's just... then you can end up really screwing up your piece. Because it's like... you start saying to yourself, I need this reference in there. I need it to work in here. And maybe it's not supposed to work. Maybe it can't work in a piece like this. But I'm going to try to carve out, something like this here. Which looks cool, so I want it to work. And it looks like I'm going to have to play a little bit with the shadow here. So I just grab some darker tones. And we'll just lay in the shadows and just... Sorry, I'm also just wary with, I don't want my recording programs to crash, so I'm constantly checking them. Okay, let's lay in these shadowy tones to really separate the wave from the rest of the water. It looks like it's kind of cuts in like that. And you get this whole shadowy fold here. And that will probably need to be blended in a bit. Zoom out and we'll just see how it's going to read. I think it's reading decent. Maybe. So yeah, like I said, you can't be married to a reference. If I was, I would be really just obsessively trying to get all the tiny details of this correct. But kind of with this, I just want the shape of this. And then, from the shape, I can throw my own colors. I can throw in my own twist on it. As long as I just, as long as I kind of keep it staying true to the original colors and the vision of the overall piece, which itself is trying to work itself out. So, I mean, here I think I don't want it to be completely white. I want some separation here. So, yeah, and just like play with it. You see what comes of it. You see what works, what doesn't work. It's so much trial and error. And then painting over and redoing and self-doubt sometimes. That's a big thing is, there's so many times where as an artist, you can get mad at yourself and just be like, well, how good of an artist am I if I can't render out a perfect wave? And it's like, well, maybe the perfect wave for you is just something in your head, and maybe this actually looks good, but it's not comporting to the exact vision you had. And that's something, that I need to keep in check with myself, is not anticipating perfection, because perfection itself might just kind of be an illusion with regards to the standard you set for yourself. And, sometimes I've made something and I think it's not that great, but then someone will say, well, that looks really cool. I remember, I think it was a course I took, an online course with the concept artist Craig Mullins, just an amazing artist. Him and Greg Rutkowski are my key inspirations as far as, digital artists go. And, well, anyways, he was saying that, like, he had to learn to stop trusting his own instincts of his art, because he hates 90% of his art, but the world loves 100% of his art. So he's like, so I'm actually the crazy one here. Like I'm not the sane one if the majority of people think this looks good. So he had to learn to start, putting so much stock into his own critiques of his art. And that's a hard thing to do because, you need to gauge which self-critiques are actually genuinely good and which are constructive and which ones are just you beating up on yourself too much. And I'm actually tempted to beat up on myself here because I don't know what I'm doing with this wave. I'm just making it and don't have much of a plan here. Maybe throw in some white, see what that looks like. Yeah, maybe that looks good. Yeah, I think that reads. The thing that's not working out for me that well is the foreground here. I don't know why. Maybe I want to stretch this back out here. Let me check, make sure I'm still recording. Alright, great, I'm still recording, and I'm still audio recording too. Okay, that's good. Alright, let's throw away this reference, I don't need that. Okay. What if I had even like a darker set of waves here? Okay, that kind of looks cool, but it's too perfectly precise. Let's blend it a bit. Let's blend it in with these waves too. See how that looks. Maybe it will just add some. Yeah, that's adding some nice texture. I like that. And yeah, I kind of like how that's looking. I'm tempted to say I don't like this over here, this piece. I'm tempted to, but I don't know if I will say that, even though I did just say that. I don't know, I feel like it's causing some compositional issues. Let's just keep it for now. Maybe I'll keep it, and then I'll think better of it after I work on the rest of this painting. I gotta figure out what I want to do. Because right now I'm just kind of detailing out everything, but it doesn't look like night to me, and I want it to look like night. So what I might do is lower the overall lighting value of the entire piece. But before I do that, let's add a little more atmosphere, some sea spray in. So I'm just gonna, take a lighter color here, a soft brush, a soft textury brush, and just gently dab in. You almost can't know it. Just gently dab in some texture. Let's bring in a darker value. Let's add a slight dark vignette to the foreground. That always looks nice. Like that. Okay, cool. And okay, so I'm wondering first whether I should make this a little darker here. Yeah, I don't know. Does that work? Maybe. The great thing about working with, I work with a ton of textured brushes, is there's a ton of implied detail. What I mean by that is, like, you can read, it's almost like you're reading in more information than that's actually there. So when I have these textured brushes, it almost gives the impression that these are all little water droplets, or these are all little cascading, you know, foaminess of the wave, but really it's just kind of the texture of the overall brush. And like, if I make this brush a little bigger, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Just grab a piece here. Let me zoom in. So like that, like, look at this. It's just such a lovely texture. I love that. Let's back that up. Unlike real painters, I can erase things without consequence. Let's make these waves a little more distinct. So I kind of like what's happening here. I made these waves a little more distinct from the background. It's given almost like that there's a cloud up here that's just floating over. I kind of like that. So let me just paint out that cloud a little bit, see what that's like if I paint this. So, like, it makes it feel like this up here is like some low-hanging cloud or some type of fog that's hanging over the water. Very ominous feeling. Like maybe this could become a thunderstorm if it's not a thunderstorm already. That's what I love about doing these loose paintings, is something can just come to you. Those happy accidents that Bob Ross talks about. That looks cool. Yeah, you'll see I'll do a lot of zooming out because it's like, going back to this, it's like, yeah, I want it to read at a very simple zoomed out level as well. So this is something I like to do as well. I'll like grab a chunk, like just with the auto select, like, I don't know, like that. And I'll just see what would it look like if I darken that piece just a tiny bit. And it's like, cool, that gives an impression that we have, you know, a darker storm cloud maybe that's in front of the rest of the stormy skyscape. And I kind of like that, so I'm going to keep that in there. And what I'm doing now is like, I can't have the edges be too perfect or else it comes across as a bit fake, so I just kind of, you know, I paint in a little wetness to make it feel more cloudier, but also make it feel more organic and baked into the actual piece. Okay, so I want to experiment with maybe just making the whole piece a little darker and see how that works out. Before I do that, let's like... I was thinking maybe like throwing in a moon, but maybe I'll throw that in afterwards. That looks cool. Is it cool though? That might work. So sometimes what I like to do is I'll just kind of, because I have the original on the non-dark version underneath, I'll just see what it'll look like if I just kind of erase that top dark layer and show a little bit of the lighter layer. That looks kind of cool. Okay, let's work with that. Let's see if we can get some type of moon or a suggestion of a moon, some moonlight pouring in through these stormy clouds here. Hold on one second. All right. All right, that's still recording. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Yeah, let's try. We'll lasso out a little shape of a moon, maybe like that, and we will just lighten it up like that. Do I want it blurrier? Maybe I want it blurrier. Maybe I do want it slightly blurrier. No, I don't know if I do. What we can do is give it a bit of a haze like that. I also don't know if I want it so blatantly clear like that. Maybe there's some clouds drifting in front of it, but yeah, let's try making it look like there might be some clouds drifting in front of this moon. Yeah, like it's like partially obscured maybe. Yeah. That might look good. Alright, let's go in and brighten it up a bit. Alright, this is like, it's still reading as a bit too bright for me, so I wonder if I set it down quite a bit. It might be too much. Hey, there's always a struggle trying to figure out the right lighting we want for this. That looks kind of cool. How much? Yeah, I kind of like how bold that is. Yeah, the moon looks a little fuzzy. I don't know if I want it looking like that. Give it back a little bit of its shape. Something like that, maybe. That looks cool. Let's make it look like there's a slight cloud being silhouetted by the moon. That might add a very cool effect here. Yeah, it's kind of cool. The clouds and the waves kind of follow a similar principle that once you kind of nail down a shape for them, they're pretty easy to push and pull around with and just experiment. And maybe we want to try like a slight highlight on this cloud. See how that looks. Sometimes that adds like a nice, like Albert Bierstadt romantic painting look. That looks kind of cool. Might keep that. Yeah, I might keep that. Let's try a slightly harder brush on the highlights here. And maybe it carries out up there. Hold on 1 second. Just gotta respond to a text. Alright. Yeah, that looks cool, I guess. So let's play around with that. I don't know if I want it raining. I don't think so. Nah. Let's see. I think I want this being slightly more distinct from the rest of the sky here. So, might do that to see what that looks like. Yep, that looks pretty cool. And sometimes it's nice to dab in just a slightly more saturated, temperature. So if you have a primarily like warm piece or a primarily cool piece, just try dabbing in like a very, very saturated, vibrant brush stroke or gradient. Not too much, just very subtle. And sometimes it can just bring your piece, make it appear a little more alive. And so, yeah, that looks interesting. All right, I'm tempted to just keep it as a seascape painting, but I kind of want to attempt putting in at least a silhouette of a ship. So let me just go back to my reference board. I'm thinking something like this would be cool. And of course, like I said, you can't be married to the reference. So we're just going to use it as kind of inspiration. So I'm going to go to a new layer because if I really botch the ship, then I don't want to deal with it. And we'll keep it just as a seascape painting. And maybe the entire piece will look bad with a ship in it. I don't know. We're just going to experiment. Actually, what I want to do is, if the moon is so bright that it's, giving a little edge light to that, maybe we can try giving a tiny edge light to the waves here too. Maybe that would look interesting. And then maybe, you know what I can do? I'm going to try this. I'm actually just going to take the moon here. I'm going to stretch it like that. And I'm going to blend it into the highlights and just see how that might look. And then maybe this, just experimenting, seeing how this might look. Looks fine. I mean, it didn't really change that much, but, the little details like that, just, you have a bunch of them, can add a nice degree of realism. Let's see, do I want these highlights to be so vibrant like this? Yes, probably works. I don't know. It's coming across as a bit too much, so I might... Let me toss this out for a second. Might try to blend them a bit better. Obviously, the highlight shouldn't be super bright. It shouldn't be as bright as the moon, because it's merely a reflection of the moon. Yeah, that looks cool. Maybe some highlights along here, along the top here, to help give us a more distinct wave form. This folding wave that we worked on earlier. Alright, let's attempt the ship. So the ship, let me see, I want to start out with maybe quite a soft brush on this, just to sketch out what I want this to look like. So maybe it's like kind of obscured by the wave back here. Okay. And yeah, sorry if there's some awkward silences. Sometimes I get caught up in the painting and I don't have much to say. But, yeah, so I'm just using this ship to get a general shape here. This ship right here. And let's get might be a little too big. Let's get it maybe like the mast up here. And, you know, I'm not paying too close attention to exact rigging or anything. This is just, it's almost a more impressionistic take on these things. The only time, you know, I've paid a lot of attention to that stuff was our Trafalgar video, which I wanted to be, you know, accurate, and of course that was big insistence on Chris when he put together the art guide was, we want this to look good. We want this to stand up to all the Napoleonic era war buffs who will crucify us if we don't get it correct. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, I do this sometimes, just because it's easier, is I will create details kind of in a much more larger form on a separate layer, and then what you can do is just shrink them like that. And it allows you to, you know, to have a more, you know, fine attention to the detail if you can create on a much, you know, larger scale and then shrink it down to a smaller scale. It's looking pretty good. I might try some stray rigging coming about here. Kind of want to have, do I want like a little flag flying? Yeah, sure. And then topped mast right here, top mast with some rigging itself. Yeah, ships they're fun little exercises. You'd be surprised how forgiving people can be if you just nail the general shape of a ship down. Because you at least need to give an impression that you have this big wooden sailing structure out there. And, you know, for a lot of people who may consider themselves artists or painters or people who sketch, maybe some of the earliest memories are, you know, making a boat or a house as a kid. Okay, what I'm gonna do, sometimes I'll pass something through a filter just to smooth things out a bit and see how that looks. That might be a bit too smooth. Yeah, we're losing some detail if we do that. So what I am gonna do though is I'm gonna lighten this, kind of bake it into, so all I did there was I lowered the opacity slightly with our ship to make it look like it's, you know, some atmosphere is in the way of it. Because of course it's probably out on the ocean with a ton of sea spray. Do I want this tilted maybe a little bit? That's the convenience of layers, is you can just do something like that. Do I want it positioned up here, maybe? No. Might be good to just have it out there. Alright, let's go in and detail this a little more. Maybe with a harder brush here. So just going in and spelling out a little definition here. Adding some texture. You know, before I continue, let me just make sure everything is recording still properly. Yep. Okay, just gonna add some texture in here. And I don't need it to be perfect. Like, even when I'm looking at this, you know, there's a ton of stuff going on here. But really the thing that attracts you to a painting like this is that simple shape and lighting statement. So for me, you know, half the time it's like, I don't need to over detail something as long as I just nail the simple statement down. And that's something that can be hard to balance as an artist, is realizing when to give up detailing something, when to give up overworking something. And sometimes that's like, yeah, the past 90 minutes I've been overworking this one detail on this ship or this mountain, and it's not worth it. It's just making the piece look kind of like crap. So sometimes you need to know when you're going overboard. Thankfully, I've gone much better with that over time, but yeah, there are like some really frustrating days where it's, you've worked something to death and it's just not working out. And you're like, okay, I just wasted a whole day, and maybe tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'll have a fresh pair of eyes and I can see it a little differently. I'm trying to see if like having a little foam here, little sea foam, makes it look like it's cutting through water a little better. And then also, I'd imagine it'd be at least casting a bit of a shadow down. So I'm gonna try seeing what that would look like. Yeah, that looks nice. Let's throw in a tiny bit of atmosphere in front of it. Just a tiny bit. Maybe at the bottom where it's hitting the water. And I feel like the rigging could be a lot more complex here too. Like just add in some shapes, see what comes of it. I'm thinking about like, this piece is so cool. As far as not cool as in like, oh, this is awesome, but cool as in the overall color temperature of the piece. So I'm thinking about adding something that's maybe a little warmer into it. So I might. This is I've done this a ton of times. Actually, let me throw out this reference. It's becoming a little distracting. But I've done this a ton of times where it's I'll throw in, you know, a lantern or some type of fire into the piece to balance it out. So we're gonna attempt that, and we'll just see how it looks. But yeah, let me get out a much warmer brush here, a warmer color. All right, let's attempt this. Make it look like there's maybe some lanterns on the ship. Yeah, that looks good. Let me make it look like it's emitting a little light. So I'd like to usually brush over light sources with a brush set to the filter known as color dodge, which has an interesting lighting effect. I don't want it that intense. Maybe give it almost like a reddish glow here. It's very subtle. And let's go in here. Just a very light touch of light. Light touch of light. Subtle. That looks cool. And so maybe this lantern light is reflecting off of the water. Let's see how that looks. Give it a bit of realism here. Just as you dab in a little bit of warm light here. And you see how that looks. It's always nice when you have a piece that's pretty monotone as far as its temperature. If it's really cold or really warm, it's really nice to give it a touch of the opposite. That's what helps with vibrancy. Anything that comes across as vibrant usually has some type of contrasting temperature tone in it. That looks nice. So I think we're just about finished. I want to focus our main piece of interest, which is the ship and the skylight. So I'm just gonna slightly, very, very slightly paint in a vignette here. Nothing too crazy. But just enough so I'm saying, hey, don't look at the dark part, look at the light part. And then what I like to do is usually play around with the colors a little bit, see if something works a little better. That might be a little nicer vibrancy there. Let's see. That might. So just go a little cooler there. And let's see. I think this wave is coming across as a little too hard. By that I just mean it's a little too rough looking. Let me just make it look a little more watercolory. Less harsh. Okay, and something I also like to do is I'll just take a chunk of a lighter area of my piece, so I just lassoed that out, and I'll overlay it and just play around with a filter, see if anything looks cool. So, let's see, does anything look cool? Does anything look cool? What might look cool here is putting it into like a lighter filter like that. Bringing the brightness down a little bit and seeing how does that kind of bake into the shadows here. And I think that looks pretty cool, but it's a little too intense, so we'll just kind of erase out some areas that we don't want that, blown out. I'll do the comparison. Does that look... not that light. Okay, that might look a little better. And then what do I want? Do I want like a moon ray coming in? If I grab a piece of the moon like that, and I stretch it like this, and of course that looks crappy, but if you play around with it, and we give it a slight blur on it, like that. It's pretty harsh, but paint it out a bit. I don't know. That might be a little too much. That might be a little too, like, perfect. A little too perfect for the moon to have a perfect moon ray like that. So I think we're like almost about done. In fact, I think we are done. What I like to do is I like to put a slight sharpness filter on it. Just helps bring out a general roughness. So here's it without the sharpness. Here's it. This is without the sharpness. This is the sharpness. So sharpness just brings out like that kind of rough painterly feel to it. There could be like another hour of tweaking, but you know, I feel like this looks pretty decent. It looks like a, you know, a generally interesting painting. Yeah, I think we're just about done. So thank you so much for watching. Let me zoom in. You can kind of see the full piece here, and I'll do a quick pan over the piece in the video itself. All right, thanks again.